Welcome back to the Lights Out podcast, bedtime stories for boys and girls around the world for when the lights go out. Good evening, boys and girls. Are you ready for bed? Are you all snuggled up, wrapped up, tucked up, nice and warm and ready for another Lights Out bedtime story? Well, you are in for the fifth treat of a fantastic book called Fing by David Williams. And here at the Lights Out podcast, we are getting ever so close to our 500th episode and halfway to our mission of 1,000 ad-free stories forever for boys and girls around the world. How amazing would that be? A story a night for almost 3 years in a row for you little ones. But back to the story, because it's all about the story, and this is chapter 5 of Fing. Giant Poops. Mr. and Mrs. Meek bolted down the street. They were quite a sight, both covered as they were in chocolatey brown gunge. The pair looked like two giant poops making a dash for freedom. Whoosh! As soon as they reached the doors to the library, they slowed to a stroll. Pitter-patter, pitter-patter. After all, the library is a place where you should always be on your best behavior, especially if you are the librarian. Where to begin? Whispered an out-of-breath father as they strolled through the aisles and aisles of floor-to-ceiling books, leaving a brown trail of sludge behind them. Ooze. The dictionary? Replied an out-of-breath mother. Their eyes searched the shelves of dictionaries until they found the widest, weightiest one. They eased it off the shelf together. The book was almost as heavy as their daughter. Mrs. Meek eagerly flicked through the pages until she reached the long, long list of words that began with F. However, soon a word that began with F, frustration, was painted all over their face. Fing isn't in the dictionary, she whispered. Oh, for goodness sake, exclaimed father. Shush, shushed Mrs. Meek, pointing to a sign that her husband himself had put up, which read silence. Sorry, he mouthed, before continuing in hushed tones. That doesn't mean there is no such thing as a thing. There are thousands and thousands of books in the library. Surely one of them must mention a thing. But what books should we look at next, father? Well, let's think, mother. What does a thing sound like to you? Both went into a deep concentration. A root-shaped vegetable, guessed mother, reaching for a big book of root-shaped vegetables. An annoying board game, suggested father, as he took down a history of annoying board games. A very distant planet, said mother, as she found the universe and beyond, the beyond of the beyond. Books, books, and more books tumbled off the shelves. Books about human body, books about motor cars, books about flowers, books about antiques, books about books. Could a thing be that thing that's left in your plug hole after a bath? Suggested father. An unidentifiable item of clothing you find in a tumble dryer? Guessed mother. Guesses were volleyed back and forth like tennis balls. Something sticky you find up your nose that isn't a bogey, a mysterious stain, a gangly bit of a jellyfish, a prize from a Christmas cracker that you never actually work out what it is, something you find stuck into a dog, that dangly bit of your belly button, and that looks like the end of a balloon, the fluffy stuff you find between your toes, the opposite of a thong, exclaimed Mrs. Meek. What's a phone? Asked Mr. Meek. I don't know, she replied, downcast. Hours passed until the exhausted pair had searched through every single book in the library. Just as they were about to admit defeat and brace themselves for a wrath of their daughter, Mrs. Meek had a thought. There is one last place we haven't looked, she said. Where? Where? asked eagerly. He asked eagerly. The ancient vaults of the library. That's where all the old books are kept. We might find a clue down there. Mr. Meek gulped. Ooh. But Mrs. Meek, we are librarians, and we are strictly forbidden to go down to the vaults. Everybody is forbidden. Nobody has been down there for 100 years. Whew. The end of Chapter 5 of Fing by David Williams. Here on the Lights Out podcast, bedtime stories for boys and girls around the world. Good night.